What's up, everybody? My name is Brett Appley. Welcome to another UFC Quick Picks here on the Mayo Media Network. We have UFC Vegas 52 on Saturday. Amanda Lemos versus Jessica Andrade in the main event. Still got 12 fights intact, and it should be a pretty fun slate. It's not the highest quality card, I would say. Not many great matchups, but kind of a fun slate to pick apart. I think there's going to be a lot of action fights. I think it's going to be a high-scoring week. As always, going to give you my favorite cash game play, tournament play, salary play, and my fade of the week over there on DraftKings. And before I do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. Let's see who your favorite play is in the 8K range. I think it's going to be potentially the 8K range that separates us this week. Kind of obvious stars and scrubs constructions we'll talk about, but there's a lot of sneaky finishers in that 8K range. If you get them right, you could definitely separate yourself from the field. So always curious to see who you guys like. And without further ado, let's get into my cash game play of the week. It's going to be Alexander Romanov at 9.6K. All right, in cash games, I like Romanov at 9.6K. We have a few obvious favorites, massive favorites at the top this week. It kind of reminds me of UFC 273, where we had Volkanovski, Chimaev, and Yan, and I kind of picked out Volkanovski as the cash game play of the week. The other two almost lost. Yan obviously did lose, but Volkanovski put up a massive score. I feel similarly about this slate. I feel far more confident in Alexander Romanov at 9.6K than I do in Dean Barry at 9.5K or Tyson Pedro at 9.3K. They all make for fine tournament options, but I think Romanov is definitely the safest of the bunch. He is minus 1,700 to win over Chase Sherman. Sherman is coming in on short notice here. He took a new contract. He was released from the UFC. He took a new contract to accept this fight, and it's a really tough matchup for him. I mean, Romanov is still one of the better prospects in the division, a really big, heavy wrestler who likes to just power through his opponents. He's averaging 5.58 takedowns per 15 minutes, and when he gets on top, he has a little bit of a submission game. He's got ground and pound in his arsenal. 4-0 officially in the UFC. And it's just hard to believe that Sherman's going to be able to stop him. The thing about Romanov is that he has not proven himself at all in terms of a distance striker. I have questions about his boxing. I don't think he's a very good striker at distance. I have questions about his defensive wrestling. So it's pretty much only his offensive wrestling and grappling that I like. And in theory, if this fight played out on the feet, Romanov's big, but Sherman's bigger. Sherman's a couple inches taller and longer. Sherman lands strikes at a pretty high rate. He's got a big noggin, but he lands with power too. So it's not as if Sherman doesn't have a path to victory. I do think Sherman does. But his defensive grappling has looked really, really bad in recent fights. I mean, he got taken down and controlled for a long time by Parker Porter, and most recently, before he got cut, he was taken down and submitted quickly by Jake Collier in the first round. And I did a thread on this in my Discord, and I talked about it in our premium breakdowns, but when you look at Sherman on his back, he is making obvious errors that it's hard for me to imagine he can fix in such a short amount of time. They're basic white belt errors. He is getting taken down, he's getting put in bottom half guard, and his hip positioning is completely wrong. He's basing out on the head instead of looking for underhooks. He doesn't understand basic defensive concepts on the ground, and it just allowed Collier to mount him and choke him out. It was really that simple. So when you have a fighter like Romanov who's going to power through him and probably end up on top at least a couple times, I just have no reason to believe that Sherman's going to escape. So Romanov has massive wrestling upside here. When he gets on top, he throws a lot of ground and pound. He's coming off a win in which he put up 134 points. He's also scored 110 and 128 in wins in the UFC. Whether or not he deserves to be minus 1,700, I don't know, but he deserves to be a sizable favorite. This fight is minus 280, under 1.5 rounds. Inside distance odds are not out yet, but I think Romanov will have the heaviest inside distance line on the slate. I really like his path to victory. I like his grappling upside. I like his overall safety, and he's going to be my cash game play of the week. Moving on to tournaments, I won't give you a super obvious one here. I'm going to go with Marc-Andre Barriault at 8.6K. This fight against Jordan Wright is one of my favorite fights on the slate. I'm definitely targeting this fight heavily. I think there's a very good chance it ends inside the distance. Officially, it's moving up. It's now minus 195 to end inside the distance. But I still think there's value. I still think there's value, for example, on under 1.5 rounds. I'm seeing it at plus 120, plus 130. Jordan Wright is 12-2 professionally. I don't think he's ever fought past a round and a half, ever. Win or lose. He's gotten knocked out quickly a handful of times in and outside of the UFC. And he also wins in the first round quickly himself. So I don't know that I buy that this fight is minus 150 over 1.5. I feel like there's a good chance this fight ends quickly, especially because Marc-Andre Barriault, who's known for being extremely durable, had never been knocked out in 18 professional fights, 17 professional fights. He got KO'd in 15 seconds in his last UFC bout. So it's hard to be confident in Barriault here. And I kind of think Jordan Wright's going to be more popular. You know, people want to save salary to pay up for the big guns. Wright at 7.6K is a good tournament option. Wright has early knockout potential, and I will be playing him on DraftKings for that reason. I think Barriault is the better option, though, because unless Wright wins by knockout instantly, I don't see him having the pace capable to keep up with Barriault, and I don't see him having the durability either. You know, Wright has fought in the UFC 5 times if you include Dana White's Contender Series. He was knocked out in 40 seconds. He won by knockout in 1:30. He was knocked out in about 5 minutes, won by knockout in 1 minute, and most recently knocked out in 1.5 minutes. He can produce offense. He hasn't been able to take punches either, and that plays a role here. He's not going to be able to get through Barriault without eating punches. Barriault's a pretty capable boxer, and yeah, he got knocked out in 15 seconds in his last fight. Fine. Maybe he has durability issues now, but in his 2 fights prior, where he went 3 rounds, he landed 118 and 141 significant strikes. I mean, he's a guy who typically thrives on durability and boxing pace, and I just have no reason to believe Wright can hold up to 120 significant strikes over 15 minutes. I severely doubt he can. This fight's going to be crazy high-paced, some wild exchanges early, I'm guessing. I think both sides have knockout upside, but playing Barriault at 8.6K, I do believe offers you a different construction than the more obvious lineups, while still allowing you high upside in your lineups. Barriault is plus 155 inside the distance. That's a good number. Like I already said, we've seen Wright put unconscious a few times in the UFC. This is not a safe play at all, but definite upside on both sides. Great fight to target, and Barriault's my preferred option at 8.6K. He'll be my tournament play of the week. Moving on to my salary play, I'll give you another one when I talk about my fade. I'm going to talk about the main event here with Amanda Lemos at 7.3K. I think this is a great fight between her and Jessica Andrade in the main event. It's another fight that I'm targeting heavily as a whole. Obviously, I'm going to be heavy on Jessica Andrade. I think Andrade has a proven pace, throws strikes at a high rate, lands takedowns at a high rate, semi-durable, and there are definite concerns about Lemos's cardio. We've seen her, she folded in her UFC debut to Leslie Smith. That was up at bantamweight. She's now at strawweight, so it's kind of a different matchup here. But in her win against Mizuki Inoue, that went 3 rounds. She slowed down a little bit, gave up a bunch of clinch time, and most recently she barely edged out a decision against Angela Hill, slowed down again after knocking her opponent down in the first round. So it's very, very easy to make the case that Andrade is the deserved favorite, that the longer the fight goes, the better chance Andrade will have, that by round 2, 3, 4, whatever, Andrade can take over this fight, potentially win by knockout. Andrade is a good option. It's hard for me to ignore Lemos at 7.3K because I think Lemos is a better technical fighter. Andrade, for what she excels in, pace and volume and pressure, she's not that technical. I mean, she closes distance poorly. She gets hit a lot. She's absorbing 5.2 significant strikes per minute. And I mean, in her recent wins, she has both of her last 2 wins are first round knockouts against Cynthia Calvillo and Caitlin Chookagian. And like, Calvillo was cracking her in that first round, but Andrade just ate it and kept walking forward. And that's fine and good, but that was at flyweight. She's now cutting back down to strawweight, and she lost her title because she did that same thing against Weili Zhang, and Zhang can actually hit with power and just put her out in 42 seconds. And Lemos is a dangerous boxer. Lemos has earned 5 knockdowns in her last 4 fights. Really impressive power for this division. Andrade and Lemos probably have the biggest power out of any fighters in this entire division, both of them. And I think Lemos is a cleaner striker. Lemos is also bigger by a few inches of height and reach. She's more precise. I mean, she lands strikes at a high pace too, 5.35 per minute. And I think she does have a chance to hurt Andrade early because Andrade has no choice but to close the distance. At range, Lemos is better. Lemos has the tools to strike at range, and Andrade really does not. So I think Lemos is going to land cleanly early, and maybe it's a stupid pick because if Lemos doesn't get this first round knockout, she might just fade and lose, and that's fine. And that's why I'll have exposure to both sides. But at 7.3K, especially when there are so many great options to pay up for, we need salary. Yeah, I'll take a shot in the underdog here in the main event. I mean, I think she can last a little bit longer than Kevin Kroom last week, who killed a bunch of my lineups. Rest in peace to Kroom. But yeah, I think this is going to be a very fun matchup, very high-paced early. No reason to trust Lemos over an extended period, but for the price, for her technical potential and the style, I think she can have success early in this fight in rounds 1 and 2. It could definitely lead to a knockout. She's only, plus 260 to win inside the distance. That's a solid mark. So I definitely think you should have exposure to Lemos this week on DraftKings. She'll be my salary play of the week. And finally, my fade of the week, it's going to be Maycee Barber at 9K. I think she's just the obvious target here. There's pretty much no one else in the 8K range that I feel comfortable fading, and it's not as if Barber can't produce either. She's shown to be somewhat dangerous striker in close. She can damage her opponents, and Montana De La Rosa, her opponent this week, has been bloodied up before, doesn't defend strikes well at all. In fact, Rosa's defending strikes at 45%. It's just not great. So if this fight plays out in the feet, I think Barber can win. It could be competitive, but Barber can definitely win that type of fight. Barber can land the more damaging strikes. Barber can even land a couple takedowns. But, I mean, Romanov rates out far, far better. Dean Barry rates out far better. Pedro rates out far better. Aori Qilang, I really like him this week. Andrade, we already talked about. Barriot, we already talked about. And then Jordan, Prachnio, Kendozko, all these fighters, they're not safe, but they have knockout upside. Barber I'm not willing to pay up to 9K for her this week, especially with a limited number of lineups. She's going to be very low owned, so using her as a contrarian option, whatever, go for it. I won't be. And on the flip side, I think her opponent, De La Rosa, is going to be one of the most popular fighters below the 8K range. I'm not certain Rosa's going to win. I probably won't be as high on her as the public will, but she's another easy salary target if you're looking for one, because Rosa, for what she lacks in physicality and boxing, she can wrestle. She lands 2.25 takedowns per 15 minutes. That's typically her path to victory. She's willing to attempt them. When she gets on top, she's got good ground and pound. And we just don't have a sample size with Barber. She's only had to defend like 6 takedowns in the UFC. It's just not enough to tell me certainly one way or the other whether she will defend them against De La Rosa. But in her last fight against Miranda Maverick, she gave up 1 takedown on 1 attempt. She did scramble her way back up pretty well, and I think that's probably what we'll see here. I think Rosa probably will be able to take her down. I don't think she'll be able to hold her down for long periods of time, but Barber's only landing in her last 2 decisions. She's landed 36 and 40 significant strikes. She doesn't really throw at that high of a pace. So I just think she lacks upside here. She's, plus 310 inside the distance. It's not terrible, but just not great comparably to other fighters in this range. I won't be playing Barber, and I think Rosa has enough wrestling and grappling upside to make this fight competitive, potentially steal a decision. So 7.2K, she's another good salary option. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's UFC Quick Picks. Thank you so much for the support. DailyFanMMA.com for all your DraftKings breakdowns needs. Just posted premium breakdowns for every single fight on the slate. Going to record a premium podcast later tonight as well. Rankings, projections, all that good stuff will be out on Friday. Thanks again to Pat and the team for having us on the channel. Make sure you subscribe here, like the video. Let us know who your favorite play is in the 8K range. You can follow me on Twitter, @Appley, @TTPP. Best of luck in your contest this week. Stay safe out there. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.